Hello and welcome Australia to the BAP, returning after a slight sojourn. With me, whoops, that was a real hard ending of the BAP tune because, I don't know, I'm just not skilled enough to sort of fade it out. Probably I started the fade down, but then I just hit pause and that's like...
Doesn't that just fade Jason and I down as well?
No, I've learned not to do that.
Excellent.
I've learned new skills from there. But anyway, joining me, Master Murphy and Desolate Dean. How are we?
Why does he get like a nice title and I get some sort of environmental reflection, or I don't know what it is?
I just
why
vamped.
Why, are you throwing shade, Frank?
I did word association. That's what came.
Right.
So maybe this is a reflection. You need to deep dig, Dean, and think, why did Franco come up with Desolate?
I don't know. You know what is an F word starting?
Is it an F word that precedes the word town that Malcolm Turnbull's a resident of? I'm familiar with that.
Could be. I think it's a very lonely town that he's a resident of. It's also probably a title he's going to get soon that doesn't come with any pride.
No.
As he draws equal with Tony Abbott as most consistently unpopular Prime Minister in Australian history.
Yeah.
And Mayor of Fucktown, is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't know where he was going with that. I was trying to recover, but you're right.
Well, some pundits have been calling it Peter Dutton's iron cage that Malcolm's locked in, which I found amusing.
I don't think Pete's smart enough to lock a cage.
Well, I don't. Inadvertently, he created a cage.
I also don't think he has the mental capacity required to run a country. I don't think he has the mental capacity required to run a department, which he's doing now.
Well, that doesn't seem to be a necessary prerequisite for modern democracies for how they vet their politicians. I give you Trump. Therefore, why can't Australia have Dutton? Well, we have Dutton, but why can't he be promoted to the next level?
It's got to be the most frightening thing, isn't it? Everything's possible. Anything and anyone is possible.
Well, he would be the Conservative poster boy if there was a leadership spill. It would be Dutton that is the likely rallying candidate, and then Julie Bishop at the other end. But no one wants either of them.
Really? I think there's a lot of noise around. Well, Peter Dutton's the main instigator of the noise around him, but there seems to be some sort of support
I'm
for
pretty sure
Peter.
that's refugees that make source of noise around Peter Dutton, moaning about their position.
He does seem to get the positive press in the newspapers, the Australian right-wing newspapers, of course, saying how efficiently, how well run his department is and that kind of thing. It's
well, who would know? No one's allowed to know what's happening.
No one's allowed to talk about what's going on. That's an on-water matter. So, are the right-wing newspapers actually rallying around him? Are they? I didn't.
There's been well, when I so rarely do pay attention to them, there does seem to be positive sort of headlines for Dutton in there, fairly continuously, particularly around when the places, refugee places for white South African farmers came up. Yeah, he got some very positive spin.
That was a special moment for Australia.
Yeah, I still hold firm and say, look, if they can get themselves on a leaky boat and cross the Indian Ocean, they're welcome here. Well,
they're welcome to Nauru.
I'd like them to be welcome here, regardless of where they come from.
I'm just saying, if
you're a genuine refugee who needs help, you should be welcome here.
They go through the same hardship as the other refugees, then they're very welcome here. I'd like to see a lot of those rich white farmers from South Africa jumping on very leaky boats. They'd be pretty impressive launches, I imagine.
I mean, there's a lot of sharks off the coast of South Africa. I'm not convinced they'd make it very far. Or is that what you're trying to allude to here? Is it that
it's kind of what I'm implying. It's a perilous trip.
Much like Gilligan's Island, but without so much humour because they're all South African.
And a little bit less island.
Yeah.
Yeah, I dare say I have to sort of push back on one of your sort of insinuations that all those white South African farmers are wealthy. I would suggest that those who were wealthy enough have long gotten away from their predicaments, and those left behind probably can't afford said launches to get do a crossing of such.
So they'd have to come
leaky
over.
boat, Frank. How much does it cost?
Over a leaky boat, then, wouldn't they? That's exactly what they'd have to do. You're right. Yeah, but maybe they wouldn't have a high-class launch or a yacht or anything like that to come over.
Gentlemen, culture time. What you got for me? and Australia, all of our 0 listeners. Well, one, we have a part-time listener.
It's probably Jason.
I haven't actually been watching much at all lately. Once again, it's been a very. I'm kind of waiting because Netflix has a whole bunch of things which are due to come out very soon. They've been plugging the latest season of The Expanse and that kind of thing, and just sort of dangling it.
There's a reboot of Lost in Space coming along.
That's actually out, I think. Yeah.
13th of April, I believe. It's when it's going to be released in Netflix Australia. They've been pushing it pretty hard on commercial TV. It looks pretty interesting. It looks like they've splashed the cash as they did with Star Trek Discovery.
High production values.
I have zero interest in watching Lost in Space that does not feature Matt LeBlanc and who played Dr. Smith on that movie?
Wow, you really have got a very narrow choice of what Lost in Space is acceptable. Then
I mean, reboots in general don't do it for me.
One movie that's acceptable. That's the one.
Yeah. It was the guy who played Dr. Smith who was really good, and I can't remember who it was.
Gary Oldman.
Gary Oldman. Yeah, there you go. That's what I need from Lost in Space is Gary Oldman, and if he's not involved, it's not going to measure up.
Yeah, that actually, with Gary Oldman on board, that looked like it was going to be good, and then it wasn't.
It wasn't. But Gary Oldman was good.
Gary Oldman was good.
But the movie wasn't.
No.
And Matt LeBlanc couldn't save it. Who would have thought? With all his star power, he just couldn't. He tried, but he just couldn't.
But yeah, so waiting for Netflix to spin out their next sort of season of shows.
Well, I did send you a top recommendation for a documentary called the Operation Odessa, which ended up being quite a really good documentary, well done. Didn't sort of skew to what I find in American documentaries of over-explaining with little detail or repetition that they tend to do, which, you know, they didn't really go down that path at all. It was really well done. So basically it covers the story. You may recall...
Get the Nazis out at the end of the war?
No.
Is this about when Putin took over the Crimea?
No, somewhere in between those two periods. Basically,
really narrowed it down there, Jason. Our job here is done. Mission accomplished.
You may recall, going back a couple of decades, that there was the story of Colombian cartels trying to purchase a submarine to do drug running between Cuba and Miami.
Yep,
and
I do remember that.
It fell apart in the end. So this film director, who I've had written down here, something Tiller. Here we go. Tiller Russell. He got a tip off from some of his FBI friends that there was this character called Tarzan that knew the story behind it and was actually a prominent figure behind it. And so he was a Russian-speaking Ukrainian. I don't know if he self-identified as Russian or Ukrainian, a Jew who emigrated to America.
He self-identified as a Jew.
He did identify as a Jew, but I don't know if he identified as Russian or Ukrainian.
Right.
He migrated to
it's all Russia, Frank.
New York, where he became
a memo from Putin.
a mobster and sort of enforcer for the mafia. And then he moved over to the West Coast, where he started a strip club. And the documentary focuses on this guy Tarzan's relationship with a guy called Juan Almeida and another guy called Nestor Yester. Yes, and how they formed their friendship and how they pretty much made a killing in the fallout of the Soviet Union, going over there purchasing stuff and then flogging in South America. But then it sort of leads up to how it all culminated into purchasing the submarine. And really well done, really interesting, and I highly recommend it for good fun.
Yeah, right. So it was an ex-Russian military submarine they were going to purchase?
Yes.
Shit.
Mm-hmm. So, it was just an old diesel junker, but the concern was that they're easily converted to battery power and then they become silent, so you can't find them. And the payloads of cocaine they could move were just phenomenal.
A submarine's a pretty specialised piece of equipment. I imagine they have to buy crew for it as well, right? They couldn't.
Can you imagine, though, a bunch of drugged up guys in a Dude Where's My Car scenario when they lose their battery powered submarine off the coast of South America?
Or when
that sounds like the kind of movie Matt LeBlanc could carry.
when they're in it and they forget how to emerge, how to come back up again.
Well, I think for those older styled diesel subs,
Have
if,
instructions written in Russian.
well, it's not that so much, but if you've got the ability to procure a sub from Russia, I'm sure you can go to old Eastern Bloc countries and not have to
And
spend
get
too
crew.
much to get, a crew willing to, pay for play type thing. So
Yeah.
it's not a nuclear sub; it's a diesel sub. So I think you'd find the crew if you did a global search quite easily. And yeah, and you have cartel cash to splash around.
Does sound like an interesting documentary.
That sounds very watchable.
I did catch one thing. I started watching a series called Rapture on Netflix, which is a series of interviews with rappers.
Oh yeah.
And the first two episodes first one was Logic, and the second one was Nas and Dave East.
Mm-hmm.
And that was pretty good. It was pretty good. I mean, I'd heard of Nas. Logic is huge, and I'd only just heard about him now, but he's freaking massive.
This was your exposure.
This was my exposure to him now. Yeah.
Can let you in on a little secret, Jason.
He's
This
been around for
right
a
now is my exposure.
To Logic.
Yeah, like you saying, I only just found out about this guy called Logic is me now.
Oh wow!
Out about this guy called Logic.
The amazing thing is he's got
I'm so street.
He's the first person ever to have. I think he's got 10 songs in the top 100 at the same time.
Yeah, right.
Something crazy like that, and he's fucking huge. And of course Nas, which was sort of old school 90s rap and that kind of thing. But good series. I'm going to watch the rest of it. There's another 4 episodes, I believe, in it. So.
Nas also was involved with the Get Down. He did all the rapping of the adult version of the main character, whose name eludes me right now. But
I didn't even know that.
just as a little Netflix fact. I haven't been watching anything good. I've been watching a trash television show called Just the Two of Us, where 2 people, be they friends or family members or partners, design each other's tattoos and then have them applied to each other, and no one gets to see it until the big reveal.
Oh no! Oh, this sounds like it's right up my alley.
Yeah, I fucking love that show. I've watched every single one they've made, which is like 16 episodes over the course of a week.
Wow!
And it is awesome. I will at some point in time. All the good reveals are on YouTube, and I'll try and highlight some for you to watch, because some people are really mean to their friends.
Wow! Wow!
There's some genuine spiteful tattoos in there.
There's some really fucking dick moves. Hey.
I think I've seen a snippet on YouTube. I didn't know what the context was of because it was just a tiny snippet. I didn't realize it was an actual show.
Yeah, it's a British show, and it's very watchable.
Is this Netflix production?
No, it's MTV.
Right. I'm guessing at a hunch here that they're using dissolvable ink that fades away after a month.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Even if it fades away after a month, Frank, some of these tattoos, it's just like friendship destroying level horrible.
Wow, I'm gonna have to search this out.
Yeah, I strongly recommend it. People having a look at it, because it's very good. It's very good.
I finally watched Annihilation and I was greatly impressed. I really enjoyed it.
It's good. It's interesting, that movie. It certainly doesn't hold your hand through any part of it.
Yeah, can you imagine being Paramount, who sold those the international rights to Netflix, though, seeing how big it's become? You'd be like,
but the thing is, I mean, if Netflix paid them enough, and it was like, well, they did the cost benefit analysis of how much they were going to make from. Yeah, I don't know. They might have done pretty well just out of the Netflix deal.
I don't doubt it. I mean, I know that the money Netflix gave CBS for Star Trek Discovery effectively covered all their production costs.
Yeah. See, with this kind of model coming up, it's kind of good, because Netflix is known as a network that actually does get these first release movies and that every now and then, which I know that's pretty good for their reputation, I guess.
Even some of I watched the you guys familiar with Workaholics?
Yep.
Yeah.
The guys from that have got a couple of movies on Netflix which I've been watching too, and I haven't hated them. Which is maybe this is my Adam Sandler zone. They've found their audience. There's enough people on Netflix that'll watch it that wouldn't go to the cinema to see it. But these guys get to make films now.
Yeah.
I know the director of Annihilation was a bit disappointed the international release was via Netflix, only in as much as, I mean, he had no problem with the audience reach it had, but it was the film was designed for cinema, not for the small screen. So you miss an aspect of something that was developed specifically for cinema.
I mean, in saying that, I mean, my TV sound system set up at home is pretty good, and there's no screaming children, there's no sticky seats, there's no fucking people rustling through lolly bags. The cinema experience is not that good all the time.
There's one movie I'm kind of interested in seeing at the cinema. Is this one A Quiet Place?
Yep.
Where the premise is it's kind of a post-apocalyptic world where something has turned up and it hunts by sound and everyone's pretty much dead. And it opens with a family surviving and they're doing everything silently, talking in hands gestures and that kind of thing. And that apparently, because of the way the sound design is put together and everything is the sound is so pivotal, they reckon the cinema is just about you really do have to see it in the cinema.
See, I was about to raise Blade Runner 2049. That's the only movie I've seen recently that I've told people you really have to see it in the cinema.
Yeah, that is awesome.
Because of how intense the sound system is. But the movie you're advocating has fucking zero sound.
It's not zero sound. it's just that they have to make zero sound. So when sound is made, it's kind of.
I think that'd be fine at home. Like if all of a sudden your cat knocks over his water bowl, you're going to freak out because you think bad things are about to happen when really it's just, your cat being an asshole. Not that I'm saying anyone has a cat who's an asshole or that anyone in this stream has a cat other than me.
All right. Newsies time? What do you got, folks?
I got a little piece about coal-fired power and a little piece about research coming out of Anglicare. They're my two that piqued my interest during the week.
I've got something that ties in with your coal-fired power a little bit. But go ahead.
Well, have you guys heard of the Monash Forum?
Yes.
Nope.
Well, you're probably representative of our audience, then I guess of the 0 people we have listening to the stream. At least half of them have probably heard of it, and probably half of them haven't. But it is an organisation on the coalition backbench, which is really just a little wrapper around Tony Abbott, Kevin Andrews, and Erica Betts that they've named after a great Australian general, Sir Jim Monash, to sort of wrap themselves in the glory while they go on a crusade to bring back coal power for all Australians.
So this is a self-branding.
Yeah, this is a self-brand. They've chosen the branding. He's a very famous Victorian, Monash University and stuff's all named after him. It's not like it would be a random choice, but it is a bit random in that he didn't have anything to do with coal. But it turns out that wacky Tony Abbott is at it again with another attempt at wedging Malcolm Turnbull on policy. This time energy policy, and he wants to highlight the differences between himself and Malcolm when it comes to who's the most coal-loving of the Conservatives. So our beautiful friends at the Monash Forum, they're putting forward that it's really about time that the government once again invested in power infrastructure and constructed a new coal-fired power plant to produce energy for the grid, because as we all know, coal is the future. Now, Malcolm's not from that camp. He doesn't believe that. What Malcolm's position is that he wants to try and shame AGL, who are shutting down the plant, the Liddell plant, to keep it open longer past the safety conditions, because coal is apparently important to the future. I don't understand what Malcolm's doing on this.
It's important to his future.
Yeah, who is it that has so much money? Is it the coal miners themselves, the coal mining companies that have got the Liberal Party's balls in a vice?
I think what it's very much what the oil companies are probably going through at the moment as well, where they're seeing that they've got to use it, they've got to get this stuff enabled and get it done, because otherwise they'll be stranded assets. So,
but you're right. AGL are the ones wanting to shut down the plant.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
they're not interested. When news reached the media this week that Alinta were trying to talk to them about buying it, the CEO of AGL, Andy Vesey, went into the media and said, "Look, there's nothing to talk about because the asset's not for sale. We're shutting it down, and we're going to use the site for renewable energy." I was wondering who in Alinta is in the pocket of someone in the coalition as well, because all of this is broke. AGL were like, no, nothing's for sale.
Hi, Alinta a gas concern?
Yes, largely.
Okay.
But power production, maybe they want to convert the.
So Alinta wants to
power
buy a
plant to be-
stranded asset.
It seems that way, yeah, to keep it running, which I
They
can only
want
assume is to help the coalition out in a self-constructed vice. And this also this weekend is Tony Abbott's. Sorry, not Tony Abbott's. It's the Polypedal charity ride, which is championed by and chaired by Tony Abbott, and he picks the path they take, and basically does all the organisation, but it's not directly Tony. Anyway, they're going to be pedaling through the Latrobe Valley, which weirdly enough is the site of this power plant that's being shut down. Weirdly, on the day directly before the 30th news poll is due out for Malcolm Turnbull. Weirdly, just this weird series of coincidences to highlight a wedge issue against Malcolm on the night before his poll. I can't imagine how all those circumstances came to be.
And who said Tony Abbott was a vindictive man? I won't stand for it.
Did you see the other piece in the paper where old eyebrows John Howard was in the paper? I had a brain fart, couldn't remember his name. Could remember the eyebrows.
Old eyebrows.
Yeah, he was in the papers.
3-termer Prime Minister.
Championing the putting away of hatchets and just the coalition get along with their day. And then Tony keeps doing all this. It's like Tony's like, "Nah, sorry, John, hold my beer. I've got this."
Take a seat, eyebrows.
Yeah. You're yesterday's man, eyebrows.
In a funny, related manner, not friend of the show, Corey Bernardi was having a go at the Monash Forum, calling them #socialists. For advocating, for the Monash. Is it Monash Forum? Is that what they call themselves?
Monash Forum, yeah.
Monash Forum. He was likening it to them nationalising the coal industry.
Well, it is. It's a former Liberal government that actually sold off these power assets, and now both sides, the left and the right of the Liberal Party, are complaining about private companies doing what they want with the assets they legitimately purchased. It's madness. I don't even understand how Malcolm got drawn into this. Like, his position is horrible. Tony's position is just backwards and weird like Tony, but like, what the fuck is Malcolm thinking?
Don't know. These are free market solutions, Dean, and sometimes you don't always understand how they work.
Corey Bernardi.
I know, it's quite funny. I mean, I didn't actually relay the rest of the rambling nonsense that was in his blog post, but I found that quite amusing that he was attacking the right of the Libs.
Well, he's pretty bitter against the Liberal Party at the moment because they stole one of his pollies in South Australia.
Yeah.
Too.
So they're free game at the moment.
I imagine so. Poor Corey.
But it is funny, Corey accusing the right of the coalition of being socialist.
Yeah. Well, I mean that. While I don't agree with privatising essentially monopoly assets, once the cat's out of the bag and you've done it, then you need to surrender that control and try and do what you can to.
Well, I don't
let
agree
the
with
industry
that.
Regulate itself.
I don't believe that there's once it's out of the bag that the government doesn't have a right to intervene again. If it's
against the industry as a whole, but not against a specific company and a specific site.
Indeed,
that isn't cool.
Yeah.
Or as the CEO of AGL labelled it, that's sovereign risk when the government starts to get directly involved in specific. And sovereign risk is a term invented by the Liberal Party too, which I thought was fantastic to use against them. What's your related story, Jason?
Well, it's just tangentially related, but it's referring to the renewable energies totals from last year in the UK, and it turns out that last year, at the end of last year, wind farms and solar panels produced more electricity than UK's 8 nuclear power stations for the first time. It just got the talking about the. This article was just talking about how the Greens are saying no more wasting time propping up terrestrial nuclear power and just start spending more money on the renewables, which is exactly what AGL apparently wants to do instead of coal. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, especially when you look at, and I was Scott Morrison was in the press as well, talking about the economics of this and how Tony Abbott was just flat wrong, because Tony was costing this at the price that an existing asset would produce power at. But if you're talking about building a new coal-powered plant, there's a lot more capital expenses you have to pay off over the course of its lifetime. It doesn't come on board at the price point he was using in his example to demonstrate how this would be cheaper. I found it very funny to watch Scott Morrison rip Tony apart on economics. I just love watching the Liberal Party self-destruct.
I know. When I saw that article come out in the newspaper, I went, "Ooh, you're going against the Australian public's love of coal. Well, a certain segment of it that votes heavily for the Libs. You're going against them because there's a narrative at the moment that coal is beautiful. Hashtag.
Yeah.
And to see ScoMo, you know,
he wasn't saying no to coal. He was just saying, look, Tony, your maths is out. Which I thought was good. It's not the first time Tony's math's been out, of course. There's that time he assumed one onion plus Tony's mouth equals fun time.
Whilst we're talking about green initiatives, you know, solar power and so forth, did you see the fallout from Richard Di Natale, the leader of the Greens, come out with proposing the idea, you know, trying to introduce to the Australian mind the concept of a universal universal income. Yeah. And the right went rabid across the media.
They did. And I saw Wally Daly, is that his name?
Yes. Wally Daly.
He wrote a bit of a really interesting opinion piece pointing out that in the future, automation's coming along, all these jobs, blah, blah, blah. People need to be honest about this because it's probably going to become reality.
Yeah.
It's always good to see someone on a commercial station at least pushing sense rather than, the nonsense that a lot of the breakfast shows do.
Oh, that's what infuriated me. No, aside from Wally, no one was coming out with, producing, sensible arguments against a universal income. They sort of just troped out stereotypes about universal incomes, trying to suggest, we're going to give people money and where they're not incentivized to work. This concept that people just don't want to work if they're given money from the government.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at, the rich, sort of wealthiest 1% of the world. They don't like working.
Yeah, that's right.
So they're just making the assumption that because they basically are happy inheriting money and living off money they're not doing anything with, everyone would do that.
They're all rent seekers, but they're fully aware of that not everyone can be rent seekers. Someone has to do rent.
It would have been interesting to see someone from the right, in terms of journalists, come out and present an economic reason as to why a universal income wouldn't work. They didn't do that. Whereas obviously those who advocate for universal income sort of do try to provide economic reasons as to why it's good.
Well,
and how it can be
that,
sustained.
As far as I'm aware, it's a bit of a stretch for the budget to afford at the moment.
Yes.
There's a significant restructuring that has to be undertaken.
Yes.
But it is also the kind of thing you've only got 20 years to do something about it. And if you don't do something about it soon, you're going to have to do something about it in a reactionary way, which is just not going to work very well for anyone.
Yeah. But it was interesting to see how he was...
mind you look at a lot of the automation projects around the world, like that Uber car in Utah that just wiped someone out. Maybe it's a little bit further away than we thought.
Yeah, people aren't going to be trusting those driverless cars for a little while, are they? It's just
even just for shipping freight and stuff. It's like, well, I don't know if I want that robot on the same road as me because
Well, there was that case that came up. I think it was the CEO of Toyota or something was asked the question about. No, it was Mercedes about if the AI in their car was asked to choose between the life of its driver, of its occupant, and the lives of pedestrians, and the guy said, "Well, it's going to be no one's going to buy a car where it's going to choose pedestrians over them." So
I didn't think of that question.
So,
this sounds
at least he's honest, I guess.
Pedestrians beware. It's just the way it is.
It sounds like you're describing an Isaac Asimov book when you'd start going down that path.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of the laws of robotics about how much harm they can do and when, kind of thing. And in this case, it's like, well, he's my occupant, so I'm going to look after him or her.
I mean, in some instances, like children's school buses, that's probably a pretty good rule.
Well, I mean, if it's going to do the mathematics just before it hits and make the decision that way,
Wait, but computers do mathematics in a fraction of a second.
I understand this, but no one really wants to have it stated who's coming out in the losing end of that, because I mean, the fact of the matter is, they reckon there'll be an order of magnitude less actual accidents happening.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing.
So,
and you're putting
overall,
you're putting an imaginary computer in charge of a Sophie's choice that you've constructed. Like, you have to kill this or you have to kill that. What do you choose? when in actuality, there's a number of options you can take before that moment occurs.
Yeah, precisely.
Where it reacts to sensory data and probably doesn't have an accident in
But
the
it
first
still
place.
comes down to
Because it can't be tired. It can't be paying attention to something else. It's always focused on its goal.
It still comes down to this one question as to who's that car going to look after more.
Yeah.
And you're not buying a car that's going to sacrifice you for the good of those 8 people on the side of the road. Sorry.
Yeah, probably not. Probably not.
Yeah.
I have potato news.
Oh yeah, mashed or
Yeah, one would suggest that what's in the noggin of Peter Dutton is pretty mashed. Peter Dutton managed to dodge a bullet with not having to...
not an actual bullet though, right?
No, well, a Freedom of Information bullet. So
Right.
basically, the BAP. I don't know what that's a. They own some newspapers. Is that what they are?
It's Australian Associated Press.
Yes, they applied for freedom of information to for information as to why Peter Dutton in 2015 granted 2 visas to au pairs. So
Oh yeah, this is the one he said was in public interest.
not in the public interest.
No, that was his justification. That's why someone called him personally when they were at the airport and been denied a visa, and he
that's right.
granted
Yes,
them one
It was in the public interest
at
that
the airport
yes,
on the grounds of it being in the public interest.
yes.
But the freedom of information request was denied, so we don't get to find out whose au pairs they were.
Yeah, so there was 2 incidents. An au pair whose visa was cancelled at Brisbane International Airport was able to make a phone call, and within a couple of hours, Peter Dutton, who claims he did not know this person, approved a new visa using ministerial discretionary powers. And then in November that same year, Peter Dutton defied written warnings from his department that granting a visitor's visa to a second au pair was of high risk because she had previously been cancelled about work restrictions. Now, in the grand scheme of things, this is not really a big issue about Peter Dutton granting 2 au pairs, visas.
Well,
but
no, but here's the thing, right? You have to be pretty important because Johnny Depp's dogs didn't get that treatment.
But I think it is of importance because it shows to, how he runs his department. So that, the ramifications of those 2 students being granted visas is not that big a deal. But in terms of what his decision process was, is a big deal. And for what ended up happening was the freedom of information request was granted, but it was heavily, heavily redacted. So the AAP pushed the case to the Administrative Appeals Tribunal, and Chris Public, a former Liberal senator, dismissed the case. I'm quoting, "I give no weight to the argument that there is some overriding or overwhelming public interest to be served by releasing further information." I call bullshit on that one.
Yeah. Maybe it was one of his au pairs.
So Peter Dutton went on the attack because basically he used a great diversionary tactic, because there was some insinuation that perhaps some people of the press were asserting that perhaps these au pairs were going to be used by Peter Dutton's family, and
or his friends.
And he vigorously came out defying it, that was slander against his wife and so forth. But whether he knew those 2 specific individuals or those individuals knew someone that knew Peter is what's in question here. And for him to be able to hide behind that, and he's not the first politician that's refused to grant FOI requests because it embarrasses them.
How did the situation of these au pairs actually come to his attention? How does that
We
happen?
don't know.
How does it come to the attention of a minister if he doesn't know someone who knows someone?
Do you know who could be the hero we need in this instance? Darren Hinch. There's a man that doesn't give a rat's ass, and if he has access to the information, he'll just release it.
Yes. Well, one would imagine that someone within immigration is the one who released this information, that gave a hint to the AAP that, hey, Peter Dutton did this and that. Maybe you want to launch a FOI request. But it just goes to show the hypocrisy of these politicians who claim to be the people's champions, but when it comes to, anything that might embarrass them, no, you can't know about it.
Yeah, I think that the government should be vastly more transparent, and this is across the Labor Party and the Liberal Party. I don't think you should be able to hide behind on water matters, or you should be able to hide behind this isn't in the public interest. Unfortunately, we put you there, we pay your salaries. You need to tell people what's going on, unless it's national security or an ongoing police investigation.
Unfortunately, post 9/11, it's too easy for them to rate everything as national security. So overclassification is just something we've been dealing with for a long time.
It's
bullshit.
Everything's classified. Yeah.
It's interesting. I've worked in local government, and there's a big hoopla made about when you become part of the local government. They, you get a lot of material regarding ethics, and one of them they talk to you about is that when you're communicating an email and so forth, only type into emails or send stuff through that you'd be happy to see on the front page of the news. And that that makes sense. What the stuff you engage in with local government is open to public view.
Yep.
Well, it should be. But funnily enough, in the same organisation where I was in, the amount of effort they went to avoid having to comply with Freedom of Information Acts was outstanding. It was incredible the effort they went to, and it wasn't. It was always to do with protecting embarrassment as opposed to anything sensitive. Sensitive only to the embarrassment of the individuals concerned.
But that's fine. It should just be allowed out.
Yes.
And it would uniformly apply to their opponents as it would apply to them.
Yeah.
And
Unfortunately,
realistically, you're going to make better decisions if you know that this decision could have repercussions, including I'm going to be embarrassed by it. You're more likely to do the right thing.
Indeed.
Even if we have to guilt you into it.
But
I don't know. I imagine a whole bunch of stuff's going to come out about Peter Dutton's department, 10, 20, 30 years from now. Once he's retired and got his pension.
One would hope.
I very much hope so. Especially the offshore detention of people.
Well, that hasn't come really out to hurt. What's his face? The original Oberfuhrer of immigration.
No, but he still works for the government, Mr. Ruddock.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Well, yeah, he's on the Christian crusade to protect religious freedom.
Mm-hmm. Someone's got to protect it, Frank.
Well, if Philip Ruddock's not going to protect the imaginary friend, who will?
Yeah, well, his imaginary friends, I imagine. They'll all get together and have an imaginary meeting where they can, lay down their smoting of people.
The other bit of news I've got was it's a continuation of something that good Messrs Dean and Jason, yourselves, mentioned earlier in the show about won't somebody think of the poor white South African farmers?
Oh, of course. Why won't they need? Look, I'm not denying people don't need help. I'm just mocking Peter Dutton. But yeah, someone's got to think of it.
Well, I'm going to be mocking.
He can't do this alone. He's got too many burdens.
Local West Australian MPs, because that's still going on. And there was a march today in Perth CBD for white South African farmers.
Really?
There was.
What were they chanting?
Well, I
want to know. I feel
how
like
did I not hear about this one?
Well, I was going to ask you if you're a man of rallies. Were you not there?
More interesting.
There's probably a counter protest you missed.
It's possibly. I mean, I can't believe that it would have been put up without a counter protest going out there of some kind.
It took a bit of work for me to find out the details of it. So I found out about on a newspaper article that was saying, there was a march, very limited details. So I went, how do I find details about it? Who organised it and so forth? So it was a mob called South African Events, and it seems like they had legitimate concerns for those white South African farmers, and they were saying they were organising the rally, and they were sort of giving a laundry list of what people should and shouldn't be doing at it, and it seemed legitimate that this particular part of the community did have particular concerns for that minority in South Africa. But what was interesting, I found out, was people of the alt-right starting to sort of adopt this cause. And I found this because basically I also found out that liberal...
It's evidence of white people being oppressed, isn't it? They're going to love it. The alt-right.
Yeah, I love that. It is interesting. I'd be interested to know if they're actually... I'm going to have to do some digging as well to find if there was a counter-protest, because I also wouldn't be surprised if... I mean, some of these people I've seen, they're pretty smart on how to use these kind of things to their advantage. So
oh, yes.
If they just joined ranks with the white South African and started pushing for other...
I dug further into it because Andrew Hastie was mentioned as a guest speaker.
Mm-hmm.
So it took me a while to find some video of it, and I'll quickly mention what Andrew's comments were. He played it very safe, so he tried to not play the race card. So he basically said that Australia has a rich history of inviting refugees into Australia, and he sort of went through the laundry list over the past 3 decades of Lebanese, Syrian, I think he mentioned Vietnamese, can't remember, but Balkans. So really tried to make it sound that the Australian is generous in extending out its hand to help refugees, and the time is now to extend that hand to the white South African farmers. So he couched it very safe. I mean, if you've sort of seen any of the media, there's a lot of why can't we bring in immigrants like us type meme going through the interwebs.
Yeah.
He didn't play that card, well, not in the public forum anyway. But where I found this video from was this weird character. So what's his name here? I've got his little website up. He is called, not that one. Whoops, maybe I lost his site because I was watching one of his wacky videos. Damn, I thought I had this loaded up. Oh, hold on. Here he is. Avi Yemini, who is a Australian-Israeli far-right advocate. From what I can tell, it's very hard to see what his exact politics are. Besides, on his Facebook page, he just says, "Leftists hate me, Islamists want to kill me, politicians try to ignore me, sensible folk like me." So I don't know quite exactly what his politics are. Although when I started watching this video, it was starting to become very evident that he's pro-white people. And some of the comments he was starting to draw. Because you're trying to figure out, why in the hell does someone of Israeli background care about white South African farmers in as much as actually flying to WA to participate in this march and film it? And
it's a little odd cause for him, isn't it? Unless the right all over the place tend to want to unite in some ways. I mean, there's the evangelical sort of ties with the Zionists in the US, where they're 100% behind Israel and that kind of thing as well. So
well, it's interesting because he's affiliated with the Australian Liberty Alliance, who they're another interesting mob which I can't figure out. Are they racist or not? They're not trying to promote racism by what I can see.
He might just have clued on to a good grift. I mean, there's nothing the right likes more than a self-hating Jew, right?
Maybe. It's interesting because this is the intro blurb for the Australian Liberty Alliance. Our Australia stands for individual liberty, small government, Western values, social fairness, and integrated multi-ethnic society. Our Australia has no place for big government, racism, moral relativism, Islamophobia, Islamization, diverse multiculturalism, or tolerance for the intolerant.
So hang on.
Can I just point this out though? The ALA, they're the people who bought Geert Wilders over.
Yeah.
The first half of that, they were talking about a multiculturally diverse nation, and then in the second half, they were saying we can't have it.
From all the shades of white, from a nice pearly white to a
nice
paper white.
Cafe au lait.
I've got to read that.
Well, hang on. So even if you had the foamed milk from a coffee but didn't put the coffee in there, that's the colour that maybe they'd be okay with.
This sentence is a real mind-boggler for me. Let me read it to you again. Our Australia has no place for big government, understand. Racism, understand. No place, good. Moral relativism, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Islamization, I know what they're talking about there. Divisive multiculturalism, or tolerance for the intolerant. Now, divisive multiculturalism, are they saying a blanket statement that multiculturalism bad, or just when multiculturalism doesn't work? I don't quite.
Divisive ones, so where they won't integrate with white culture.
Right.
That's when they're being divisive.
So
if you won't absolutely integrate with white culture or adopt
white culture doesn't absolutely integrate with white culture.
Yeah, well, hey, we've already established that there's no consistency in this sentence, is there?
Take a look at the various Christian churches. They don't even agree on their imaginary sky friend.
So it seems like they have a fig leaf that they're not racist. Would you agree on that sort of level? But then when you look at their...
I think they don't want to be regarded as racist, so I would agree on that.
It's a very small fig leaf.
But from the blog title, let's hear this one. Let's help the right African refugees, in reference to white South Africans.
Of course.
Nice.
So, yeah. And this is where this... here we go. Avi Yemeni is joining forces with the ALA. Outspoken political activist Avi Yemeni is joining forces with the ALA. Avi brings the right attitude towards Islam, political correctness, and divisive multiculturalism to the party. Now it's starting to make sense.
Yeah. Clearly it's this anti-Islam thing which has really got them both united.
And he's very big on that. And he's not shy on using certain derogatory terms towards Palestinians and so forth, or those who... Apparently it's okay to march for oppressed white South African farmers. It's not okay for Palestinians to march in Australia about what's happening over in the Gaza Strip.
Yeah.
They're terrorists, apparently.
I'm going to see if I can find this. There was an interesting headline, and it came up on Twitter, and it was the line in the headline, the lead paragraph about the Palestinians was how they'd set fire to tires 200 yards away from the border. It was Palestinians had set fire to tires 200 yards away from the border, and Israeli soldiers were firing back from 200 yards away. And the little meme thing was that feeling when you fire back at burning tires.
I mean, tire smoke does create quite
it
a good
stings, man. It
yeah.
stings.
And
So
and it
much.
conceals well too. Like it's pretty thick. It's black. I could see why.
So
they
we
might maybe
just
be
got to shoot
concerned.
indiscriminately into that.
Oh
but-
no, there was an Israeli sniper who shot some guy who was filming himself play football recently. Like there's been some bad, just ridiculous stuff happening. And when I saw that, someone said, "Oh, maybe they mistook his mobile phone for a tire."
Well,
I was like, too soon. Too soon.
Yeah, too soon. But there's enough footage of guys running away from the border getting shot.
Yeah.
I mean, they're running away, clearly running in the opposite direction and getting shot.
It was an offensive retreat, Jason.
Yeah, yeah. They're looking to regroup, and then they're going to walk slowly forward again, unarmed.
Yeah, look, I wouldn't necessarily think that march is a good thing, especially with people they're willing to be in bed with.
Yes,
The
it's-
ALA in particular.
This-
Not the Palestinians. Sorry, I'm just bringing it back on topic for Frank.
Yeah,
yeah,
sorry.
no,
The
I,
White South African march being associated with the Australian Liberty Alliance is not a good thing.
well,
Maybe they
yeah.
don't realise that, but they're quite racist.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I don't think necessarily that the organizer of this event necessarily invited the ALA. I think the ALA co-opted this event. I mean, I'm not too sure because they seem to get access to the stage to do the filming. So maybe the ALA sold them a lemon about who they were. I don't know. Maybe they are.
Oh, look,
maybe,
I mean, at the end of the day, though, if you're organising an event, it's your responsibility to work out who you're getting involved with, who's coming on board, who's going to be filming there, and that's on you if you make a mistake. I have no problem with the ALA potentially speaking at that event and being involved, but it does sort of give a bit of a tone to the rest of the. Well, I associate the tone with the rest of their event as a result.
Yeah, I think the what's the word I'm looking for here? The group that are pushing this particular issue are straddled between a delicate balance of advocating for a legitimate case for refugee status for these farmers versus are they going to be co-opted by white nation power?
Yeah, well, probably.
Although I saw Andrew Hastie dial it back a bit when he's giving his speech and probably very cautious
Well,
about his...
It's very fine ground for him to be, thin ice for him to be on, I think.
Yeah, he's I saw some photos of him in the newspaper. He seems to be stacking on the kilos since he became a politician.
Oh, did he?
I'm fat shaming Andrew Hastie. That's right.
Yeah, what's that about?
I don't know.
I mean,
When
I
an
think you
SAS,
stack on
an
kilos
SAS
when you
guy
win a
starts
politician.
getting a bit pudgy. That's it's kind of funny.
Yeah,
That's what good, wholesome Christian values do to you.
Yeah.
yeah. That's the power of Christ flowing through him, Jason. I've seen,
Hallelujah.
George Christensen. He is flooded with the power of Christ, that man.
Oh, you got anything else, lads?
I've got one about the power of Christ.
Okay.
That's the best sort of segue I can do on
And
it.
it
So
compels. It compels.
very early in the week, Anglicare came forward with a bunch of research that they released, which I thought was really good. So they pointed out, based on statistics from the Australian Bureau of Statistics and Treasury Department, that the richest 20% of all Australians cost the taxpayers through their various concessions around half the total of all welfare payments we make. Those welfare payments is age pensions,
Yep.
family payments, New Start, disability. It was the top four, and it was just really interesting to see them highlight. And the main areas when they highlight the difference between a rich family and a poor family of 2 adults, 2 kids, yada yada yada. It was once again, unsurprisingly, capital gains discounts, superannuation contributions not being taxed as effectively, and negative gearing that were causing all of this problem. I thought all of that was really nicely timed and just bad news for Malky T.
Well, we hold our breath to see. Well, when does that poll come out?
Tomorrow. He's going to lose it,
Yeah.
but it won't matter.
No.
But he's going to lose it. There's the only time you can call a spill motion is at a coalition party room meeting.
Yep.
And there aren't any tomorrow.
Okay.
They're
Yeah,
on,
so
they're on vacay.
he'll
think-
dodge a
I think
bullet for a week
May.
or two. Oh, May. So he's got a bit of time
Yeah.
to recover
May. They have to go until May.
and
So they won't
explain
be sitting together until next month.
why a statement where he said that a leader should leave after 30 negative polls, why he shouldn't have to leave.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll see if Team Tony can wrangle enough support behind the scenes. But they seem to be, some people are rallying behind Tony, the old guard. Some people are rallying behind Dutton. Some people are rallying behind Julie Bishop. There's no sort of, there's not enough numbers in any one of those camps to win. You'd have to have someone unite, like a unified Dutton Abbott sort of ticket would do it. But it would be a power couple, no doubt.
What, the Tony Dutton ticket?
Yeah. I mean, it's a shame he can't get Peter Costello back, so you could have the Abbott and Costello ticket. That'd be the winner.
All right, chaps, I'm out.
I'm out
Alrighty.
too.
I'm good. I'm done.
All right, boys. Thank you for listening, Australia. I've been Franco.
I'll be Jason.
I'm Franco.